let's move on to Tucker. His big interview with Putin. I think, when is it dropping, today or tomorrow?
It is alleged. Nobody knows.
Okay.
It has been foretold by the Russians that it will be happening tonight at 6 p.m.
All right. Yeah. So listen, whatever you think about Tucker Carlson, the reaction to this has been completely insane, including there's some EU politician, diplomats, whatever you want to call them now, who are floating that he should be sanctioned and banned from the EU. Put this up on the screen. This is from Newsweek. This is the second element, guys, that we have here, E3. Tucker Carlson could face sanctions over the Putin interview. One European diplomatic official who didn't wish to be named, as they were not authorized to speak publicly, told Newsweek any future travel restrictions would likely require proof he is linked to Moscow's aggression, something that is absent or hard to prove. So they're saying it's kind of a long shot that this would actually come through. But the same person who says it's a long shot says that they support it.
Yes. They
agree with the stance. Quote, he's no longer a newsman, but a propagandist for the most heinous regime on European soil and the one which is most dangerous to our peace and security. This diplomat said to the Newsweek of Carlson. At the same time, Hillary Clinton weighing in on her thoughts on the whole situation. Let's take a listen to that.
He's like a puppy dog. You know, he somehow has, after having been fired from so many outlets in the United States, I would not be surprised if he emerges with a contract with outlet, because he is a useful idiot. He says things that are not true. He parrots Vladimir Putin's pack of lies about Ukraine. So I don't see why Putin wouldn't give him an interview, because through him, he can, continue to lie about what his, objectives are in Ukraine and what he expects to see happen. It's really quite sad that not just somebody like Tucker Carlson, who has, as I said, been fired so many times because he seems unable to correlate his reporting with the truth, but also because it's a sign that there are people in this country right now who are like a fifth column for Vladimir Putin. And why? I don't know. I mean, why are certain Republicans throwing their lot in? Why are, other Americans basically believing Putin? Why did Trump believe Putin more than our 11 intelligence agencies?
I don't know. Do you have a working theory?
I do have a working theory.
So, I mean, it's just...
She's still on Russiagate. It's at the
insane.
End, the both of them, too. They're still on it.
And she just lets that all go, of course.
Come on!
Yes. And listen, I mean, my first thing with all of this is the interview hasn't even happened yet.
I know.
Wait? Like,
That's the
for people on both, like the people who are like, this is going to be amazing, and the people who are like, this is terrible. It's like, could we just wait and judge the interview?
I could not,
Number one.
I could not agree with you more.
But that being said, even if it's complete propaganda, which I think is very possible, if not probable, if not likely. We hear the US Western propaganda all the time. You know what? It's a benefit to hear the other side propaganda too and understand their perspective, how they're spinning it to their population. So even if it's 100% propaganda, then it still is a good thing for the American population to hear what the Russians are saying and how they are explaining this conflict in their position. Even that would be beneficial.
I'm glad you said that, because that's basically what I was going to pick up on. Everyone's like, so first of all, they're like, well, he has to challenge him or otherwise it's not real. I'm like, yeah, you guys have been slobbering over Zelensky for the last 2 years. Anne Applebaum, literally with tears in her eyes, talking about the goddamn hero of democracy. I just watched a clip of a CNN reporter literally nearly in tears talking with Zelensky. So shut up about propaganda, number one. You people have been the propagandists in this war from the beginning. Number two, as you said. Now, look, I hope that Tucker actually does challenge him on a couple of things. Number one is the detention of the American journalist, Evan Gersovich, who is currently in prison unjustifiably and needs to be released. I will be very disappointed if he doesn't bring that up, but maybe it was a precondition or something like that. I personally would not have agreed to that. We'll see. As you said, the literal thing is not aired yet. Two is on the justification. I'll be like, you said you're doing this to make Russia safer. Now, listen, I don't agree that the United States should be all that involved. That said, you've killed 300,000 of your men. Maybe more of the people here. How do you sleep at night? What do you tell those moms who lost their sons and daughters who were there? What's the justification? I want to hear that. But then even if it wasn't challenging, as you said, okay, so I have been subjected to the biggest Ukrainian psyop of war in my lifetime since Iraq. Yeah, I want to hear a little bit of what the other side is. I'm a fully functioning, capable adult who can see Putin talking about the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and be like, that's bullshit. That's not actually what happened. Many people can do
Tucker Carlson did it. He actually interviewed the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, in a 2-hour marathon interview that is uncensored, uncut, and in which Vladimir Putin gets to actually talk to the American and the collective West public. This is also what causes the entire meltdown in the West, that now these words spoken are out in the open. Of course, he's being portrayed as a propagandist, but what Vladimir Putin said in this interview would need quite many segments. In this one, I really only want to focus on the actual peace offer, because he offers to end this war through negotiations, as he has been doing time and again, but this time it's actually being noticed, even in the New York Times, and we will look at that in a second. But first, let's listen to the crucial moment, the last 6-7 minutes of the interview, in which Vladimir Putin, answering one of Tucker's questions, really makes it very, very clear that he is not only open for negotiations, but he also lays out what the ground for that would be and how to actually do it. So let's watch these 6.5 minutes and then we'll discuss further.
I already said that we did not refuse to talk. We're willing to negotiate. It is the Western side, and Ukraine is obviously a satellite state of the US. It is evident. I do not want you to take it as if I'm looking for a strong word or an insult, but we both understand what is happening. The financial support, 72 billion US dollars, was provided. Germany ranks second, then other European countries come. Dozens of billions of US dollars are going to Ukraine. There's a huge influx of weapons. In this case, you should tell the current Ukrainian leadership to stop and come to negotiating table, rescind this absurd decree. We did not refuse.
Sure, but you already said it. I didn't think you meant it as an insult, because you already said correctly, it's been reported that Ukraine was prevented from negotiating a peace settlement by the former British Prime Minister acting on behalf of the Biden administration. So of course they're a satellite. Big countries control small countries. That's not new. And that's why I asked about dealing directly with the Biden administration, which is making these decisions, not President Zelensky of Ukraine.
Если администрация Зеленского на Украине отказалась от переговоров,
well, if the Zelensky administration in Ukraine refused to negotiate, I assume they did it under the instruction from Washington. If Washington believes it to be the wrong decision, let it abandon it. Let it find a delicate excuse so that no one is insulted. Let it come up with a way out. It was not us who made this decision, it was them. So let them go back on it. That is it. However, they made the wrong decision, and now we have to look for a way out of this situation to correct their mistakes. They did it, so let them correct it themselves. We support this.
So I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what you're saying. I don't think that I am. I think you're saying you want a negotiated settlement to what's happening in Ukraine.
Right. And we made it. We prepared a huge document in Istanbul that was initialed by the head of the Ukrainian delegation. He affixed his signature to some of the provisions, not to all of it. He put his signature, and then he himself said, we were ready to sign it and the war would have been over long ago, 18 months ago. However, Prime Minister Johnson came, talked us out of it, and we missed that chance. Well, you missed it, you made a mistake. Let them get back to that, that is all. Why do we have to bother ourselves and correct somebody else's mistakes? I know one can say it is our mistake. It was us who intensified the situation and decided to put an end to the war that started in 2014 in Donbass, as I have already said, by means of weapons. Let me get back to further in history. I already told you this. We were just discussing it. Let us go back to 1991, when we were promised that NATO would not expand, to 2008, when the doors to NATO opened to the declaration of state sovereignty of Ukraine, declaring Ukraine a neutral state. Let us go back to the fact that NATO and US military bases started to appear on the territory of Ukraine, creating threats to us. Let us go back to coup d'etat in Ukraine in 2014. It is pointless though, isn't it? We may go back and forth endlessly, but they stopped negotiations. Is it a mistake? Yes. Correct it. We are ready. What else is needed?
Do you think it's too humiliating at this point for NATO to accept Russian control of what was 2 years ago Ukrainian territory?
Я же сказал.
I said let them think how to do it with dignity. There are options if there is a will.
Варианты есть. Но если такое желание.
Up until now, there has been the uproar and screaming about inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield.
Стратегического поражения России, поражения на
Now they are apparently coming to realize that it is difficult to achieve, if possible at all. In my opinion, it is impossible by definition. It is never going to happen. It seems to me that now those who are in power in the West have come to realize this as well.
это осознание пришло. Подумайте теперь.
If so, if the realization has set in, they have to think what to do next. We are ready for this dialogue.
Would you be willing to say, congratulations, NATO, you won, and just keep the situation where it is now?
Ну, вы знаете, это предмет переговоров.
You know, it is a subject matter for the negotiations. No one is willing to conduct, or, to put it more accurately,
Точнее сказать, хотят.
they are willing but do not know how to do it.
Я не только вижу,
I know they want
я
to.
знаю, что
It is not just I see it, but I know they do want it. But they are struggling to understand how to do it. They have driven the situation to the point where we are at. It is not us who have done that. It is our partners, opponents who have done that. Well, now let them think how to reverse the situation. We're not against it. It would be funny if it were not so sad.
Да, было бы смешно, если бы не было так грустно.
This endless mobilization in Ukraine, the hysteria, the domestic problems, sooner or later it will result in agreement.
Истерика, там, внутренние проблемы.
You know, this probably sounds strange given the current situation,
Все равно мы договоримся. И
but the relations between the two peoples will be rebuilt
в
anyway.
сегодняшней ситуации прозвучит.
It will take a lot of time, but they will heal.
Между народами восстановится. Потребуется много времени.
I'll give you a very unusual example.
And then, then he gives an example of what, how Ukraine and Russia still belong together. But the important thing here really is that Vladimir Putin, speaking as directly as he can, basically to the Americans and the collective West, really lays out what a peace, a way forward to peace would be, and that's to get back to Istanbul. The Istanbul agreements, what has already been done, what has already been achieved. And this is really surprising to me, because we know from the things that have leaked that the Istanbul agreements were very favorable to Ukraine, in fact, and that Vladimir Putin here clearly, utterly offers to negotiate based on what has already been achieved in Istanbul. That is surprising, which just signals also that he's open to negotiate where the contact line would be, that how much of the eastern regions would remain Russian. I mean, all of this is open if Istanbul is again the basis of negotiation, which doesn't mean that the Russians would accept it, which doesn't mean that the Istanbul would be implemented 1-to-1, but it means that Putin is ready to do this, and he has hinted at this several times over the past. He has flashed the document into cameras without anyone being able to read it, and I was always wondering, why does he not publish it? Why does he not
Tucker Carlson is lying.
Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country.
That's a lie. CNN asked for Putin for an interview, and he told us to f off.
Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine.
Tucker Carlson is a great journalist. I would never have the set of Zyn cans to go to Russia. Did you see him wrestle that bear like Alex Terrible? It was amazing.
Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in.
Oh, this, I'm out of here.
What's up, guys? Boy, Benny. An important reminder that journalism is sacred, okay? Our First Amendment is first for a reason. And only journalists and credentialed reporters through corporate media outlets and the highest quality of person should be allowed to interview world leaders, especially world leaders at war. And for that, I bring you, ladies and gentlemen, the only person qualified to interview Volodymyr Zelensky, the patron saint of Kyiv, Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg is, in fact, someone who asks tough questions.
It's very important
in flannel shirts.
To have this. You made a decision about this compact of
special,
very concrete steps.
Conversation. Wow. So eloquent, so beautiful. Let's just hear it one more time. What does the supreme leader have to say to our brawny man looking interviewer in her lumberjack outfit? Let's go.
Have to have this. You made a decision about this compact of very concrete steps.
So profound. Thank you, Greta, for your sacrifice, for journalism, and for information. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you happen to be a member of the corporate media, you're allowed to interview anyone you want. But if you are someone who has a much larger audience than all corporate media combined, and you want to interview somebody who's a world leader or just important, well, then this is what our corporate press is going to look like. They are going to lose their ever-loving minds, which is exactly what they're doing with Tucker Carlson right now. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a particular anchor on CNN named Erin Burnett, who decided to seethe, cry, and wail while ripping and rending her garments on air about Tucker Carlson daring to go and interview Vladimir Putin. CNN lost their mind. Lost their damn minds. Erin Burnett is somebody who was clutching her pearls as hard as possible, saying, in fact, that Tucker Carlson doesn't have the credentials to do this, and that he won't ask hard questions. But ladies and gentlemen, the internet is forever and has a very long memory. And we remember when Erin Burnett went to go interview Volodymyr Zelensky and ask some real tough questions, ladies and gentlemen. Real journalism is nearly weeping in the presence of Zelensky and begging him to tell you his favorite type of music.
As a human being, so many people look up to you. They rely on you. No one can imagine how hard that is. Do you do anything for yourself? Are you ever able to take a minute to read or to listen to music or something to sort of give yourself that a moment?
She's almost crying. Look at this. Look at that. She's almost crying. Look at her she's getting weepy.
To read or to listen to music or something to sort of give yourself that a moment.
I have such moments, important, to be in silence, to be alone. Alone, how can I be alone? Alone, I can be with music, it's true, or with a book. And early in the morning, when there are no sounds in...
No air raid sirens.
No people, nobody. I mean, the people...
First off, how short is Zelensky? Two, like, why is this guy always wearing some like greaseball Eastern European tracksuit? Look at him in a little muscle shirt there. Because he's an actor. He's playing a part. Look, he's literally, like, by trade, he's an actor. Go look at his Wikipedia. It says Zelensky, actor.
Our staff. I mean, nobody is in my cabinet.
And he deserves an Academy Award for this one.
Read, think, and the music helps, really.
What music do you like?
Oh, I like AC/DC and Ukrainian music. Of course, I like Ukrainian music a lot because Ukrainian, that's native language. That's why you understand not only music, you understand the words and etc. AC/DC, I don't understand all the words because of...
But you like the music.
Yeah, I like energy of AC/DC. I like Eric Clapton, a lot of Guns N' Roses. Maybe it's too old music for...
I understand. We're the same. We're the same.
I love it. No, it's...
We're the same. We're the same. Look at this image. Oh my God. This is what Elon Musk had to say as it pertains to the actual interviews that Zelensky has gotten. To be fair, it's hard to talk to them while giving a blowjob at the same time. Who are the American journalists who conduct even minimally adversarial interviews with Zelensky? Asked Glenn Greenwald. Elon Musk responding, it's hard to talk while giving a blowjob at the same time. Oh, isn't that just perfect?
No, it's important to have sometimes at 6, 7 in the morning, some trainings.
Workout.
Yes, workouts. What to do something with music, with such music, which gives you energy for all the day.
Oh, okay. Yes, please. Thank you. Oh, thank you, CNN. Thank you, CNN, the arbiters of journalism, the arbiters of the free press, conducting such a hard-hitting interview, the most important interview, perhaps in the history of humankind, is what kind of music does the greasy, corrupt, scandal-laden dictator of Ukraine listen to? The man who banned the Christian church in Ukraine. Got it. Ladies and gentlemen, try not to laugh. CNN host on the verge of tears as they fight waterworks after Tucker confirms Putin interview. This has gone nuclear on our account. It's so funny. You got to check this out. Watch her hold back sobbing tears. Her voice is literally cracking here, ladies and gentlemen. You can't make it up. They're crying because they're not able to interview Putin and ask him, what's your favorite music? Tee. Watch.
Interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin.
Tucker Carlson is lying from the streets of Russia, no less.
Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin.
That's a lie. Serious news outlets, including CNN, have requested Putin to interview over and over again.
Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice.
Another lie. Serious news outlets, including CNN, have covered and, of course, reported on Putin's words since this war began, including one of his baseless justifications for the invasion of Ukraine, which he initially claimed was to stop the Nazis.
First, because it's our job. We're in journalism.
Happy Friday, everybody. And today we have a crucial show. Truly, I don't ask you guys this often, but this is one of those episodes where I don't want you to just listen to it. I want you to actually share it with other people because something happened yesterday that I don't know we would have ever had the opportunity to have this happen had it not been for Tucker Carlson being an independent journalist sitting down with Vladimir Putin. And the implications are severe. So I'm going to take you through the 5 biggest moments and what they mean. But first, I want to start with this clip from Julian Assange.
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it. If they had searched deep enough, if they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
How do you fool a population into war? That's what we're discussing today, coming up on Candace Owens. So many different ways that I could go in this episode. First and foremost, we should dedicate an entire series to discussing who Julian Assange is and why he is so critical. A lot of you guys were probably waking up at the same time as me, recognizing that something feels wrong in America and that we have been severely propagandized in the West, all throughout the West. And I know that so many nations are watching this all across Europe as well, which is why this conversation is so important. But I'm going to pause on Julian Assange, just give you a very quick update. You know, he is a journalist who basically controlled the hacking network that when he would release files, he would somehow get into the systems of the government and release files from the CIA all over the world, which would force them to have to tell the truth about things that they were lying about. So you can imagine why the CIA quite literally tried to kill him, right? Tried to kill Julian Assange, and they are now trying to virtually imprison him for the rest of his life. He's a very significant character, but that is not what I want to discuss at length today. Instead, I want to talk about this interview between Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin, and to really understand why it was that they were freaking out. When I say they, I am talking about the mainstream media pundits were freaking out. They didn't even know what Putin was going to say, but they knew that the conversation was not allowed to be had, which is weird, obviously. Because if their narrative that Putin is a crazy, insane, ailing, dying dictator is accurate, then wouldn't you want more cameras on him? Wouldn't you want to say, look, we told you he's crazy and we have to go to war? So I want to back this up because the question I asked you is, how do you fool a population into war? Well, in 1949, English writer George Orwell published a novel, you may have heard of it, entitled 1984. And he describes really a totalitarian nightmare society where there is mass surveillance, a repressive totalitarian regime, constant propaganda, the thought police, right, telling you whether something is true or something is false, a ministry of truth that gets to establish whether or not what you are saying is true or false. This is why when you see people talking about an Orwellian nightmare online, when they're saying, oh my God, I wrote something about a vaccine, and then suddenly a fact checker came in, people go, oh, that is the ministry of truth. And in the West, unbeknownst to most of us, because we've been brainwashed, we have been living inside of an Orwellian nightmare. This is a direct quotation, by the way, from 1984 regarding how one aspect of this alleged society would be, this dystopian society rather, would be that there could be no concept of history. You're not allowed to learn history in a society like this. And this is the quotation. Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book rewritten. Every picture has been repainted. Every statue and street building has been renamed. Every date has been altered. And the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. Yes, thinking about American society, thinking about people pulling down statues, rewriting history, telling us everybody was a racist, a sexist, a misogynist. This is why these books can no longer exist. We are living in a permanent present, which is why Americans know nothing about history. That is the biggest takeaway, the first takeaway, I would say, rather, from this sit-down interview is just how ignorant Americans are about not even history a long time ago, but history even a couple of years ago. And it's intentional, by the way. Look at these recent statistics coming out of Washington, D.C. what these statistics reveal is that in the Washington, D.C. area, by the way, this is supposed to be the wealthiest areas surrounding Washington, D.C., just 19% of students are proficient in math, and just 31% are proficient in English. That is an utter insanity, but it is intentional. This is why the federal government wanted to install the Department of Education, because it was meant to be a department of propaganda and a department that is going to convince children of a permanent present, care about this present issue, don't actually even know how to speak your own language or be able to calculate anything into the future, but we're going to convince you that this is an education anyway. It's an abject failure. So when Putin sat down with Tucker, the first hour really was just him focused in describing the history of the Russian Empire. I mean, he started in 8th century. It was stunning. Take a listen.
The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862. In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia. Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne.
So yes, that was quite stunning, and people were going, I couldn't pay attention to him going through that, because in America, they want you to be ADHD. They don't even want you to be able to focus on hearing anything long form. And in America, as I said, we are definitely not allowed to learn history, not our history, least of all the history of the Russian Empire. In fact, you don't even likely know what happened in 2014. That was something that became apparent to me as I was trying to discuss Ukraine as a region, talking about what their relationship was to Russia, and I was attacked by the media. So let me tell you what happened in 2014. Ukraine at that time had a pro-Russian, democratically elected President Viktor Yanukovych. The U.S. then openly supported a coup against him. And they did this by supporting, you're not even going to believe this, far-right neo-Nazis. Remember the Azov battalion that you may have seen the media trying to get you not to pay attention to? Yes, throughout this interview, Putin keeps talking about trying to denazify Ukraine. He's not being dramatic. There are neo-Nazis in Ukraine, and yes, they are wearing emblems of swastikas and things of that nature to recruit people, talking about the supremacy of the Aryan race. And before 2021, our media told us how bad this neo-Nazi problem was in Ukraine. Take a listen to this Time correspondent who traveled to Ukraine in the summer of 2019 to investigate their white supremacy problem.
Over the last few years, experts in violent extremism have grown especially alarmed about the Azov movement. The group emerged from the revolution that swept across Ukraine in 2014, and it has gotten a lot stronger amid the ongoing war with pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine.
The official symbol of Azov, it's a version of Wolfsangel. It was one of the symbols of one of SS division during the World War II. It is one of more or less usual symbols for neo-Nazi groups all over the world.
What worries officials in the West is Azov's recruitment strategy. It's tried hard to build friendships with far-right groups around the world, especially in the US and Europe. During my visit in 2019, I spent a day at one of the biggest recruitment events in Azov's history. Thousands of people showed up for a day of fighting sports and blatant propaganda. There were neo-Nazi symbols, tattoos, and posters all over the place.
So just to recap, despite all of this information that we knew about this far-right group, despite the fact that we knew that they were Nazis, your media decided to abandon that narrative because, well, we had staged a coup by locking arms with these neo-Nazis. And so when 2021 happened and Putin started saying this Nazi problem, why is the West funding it? We just went ahead and did an about-face. Incredulously, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, allegedly, right? But get its roots because they're constantly calling people anti-Semitic, right? They constantly talk about the Holocaust. They got behind the Azov battalion. They said, we don't consider them a far-right group anymore. People that are wearing Nazi symbols, we don't consider them a far-right group anymore. We consider them freedom fighters. What does that tell you about the ADL? That they are a part of a propagandist arm, that they work for the state, and at their core, they are Marxists. They don't believe any of the things that they say. They just want to censor speech and control speech. These are all fraudulent groups. So yes, going back to this narrative so that you understand, we then installed a puppet regime, Poroshenko, on Russia's borders. And what happened was it prompted a civil war in Ukraine. Now, pay attention to the fact that this happened back in 2014. Why is that significant? Because I think that we would have gone to war in Ukraine much earlier had it not been for a certain Donald J. Trump, who was unexpected by the state. They typically are picking our presidents. They did not expect Donald Trump, and the regime flipped out because it was an interruption into perfectly laid plans that they had begun in 2014. So what happened, yes, was that Ukraine launched basically a civil war is what happened. People in the East versus people in the West, right? People that were in the East, obviously backed by Russia, going, what is going on? And people in the West, backed by the Ukraine army, backed by the United States, because, well, the west of Ukraine, I know that a lot of Ukrainians watch this show, has had influence by NATO. They have been influenced. They have been making incursions, all sorts of little things that are happening. In fact, I was talking about this when the war broke out. I was trying to draw people to the fact that what is happening is really sort of a civil dispute that has been going on for a very long time, that the majority of people that lived in Ukraine spoke Russian until they started mandating that they no longer teach Russian in the schools. This is kind of trying to change the culture. And when I talked about these facts,
initially, we want to talk about Tucker Carlson facing threats of EU sanctions because we have confirmed statements from these parliamentary members in the EU, literally threatening Tucker Carlson over his interview with Vladimir Putin. But then I realized the gravity of some of these tweets. You've got this tweet from Juanita Broderick with 12,000 retweets, 31,000 likes, and 3.8 million views, followed by a quote tweet from Cat Turd with 1.7 million views and 15,000 retweets. Juanita Broderick says this POS dictator Zelensky has put Tucker Carlson on a kill list for interviewing Putin. Biden has helped him with your tax dollars. This is incorrect. Okay. Cat Turd says this should disqualify this corrupt POS from getting another dime from our country. The challenge here is it's a massively viral story that is half wrong, half right. No Ukrainian government official, according to the fact check, has placed Tucker Carlson on this list. In fact, this website has had Tucker Carlson on the list going back to August. So he wasn't just placed on it, and it wasn't because of the interview with Vladimir Putin. Now, to be fair, Juanita Broderick did not say because, or actually, no, she literally did say for interviewing Putin. It appears that there is another entry placed because of following his interview with Putin. Now, it's not a kill list. It's a propaganda directory of some sort, a resource for pro-Ukraine individuals. And the reason why I say it's kind of half true is the fact checkers are trying to claim it's not a kill list. It's literally not, but it kind of is. You know what I mean? If you're a high-profile individual and you appear on this list, they are basically saying to anybody who might have access to you, you are a bad person who is working against them. And of course, it has been reported that many people who do appear on the list have been killed. You know, and I don't know how many or what the ratio is, but I do certainly think it was important to start with this because it's gone a little bit crazy on social media. That being said, I want to highlight something that, I thought I had this pulled up, but now it's gone. Totally lost.
Come on, Ian, with your cans. And
it's
taking a sip for that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. What happened to this story that we had pulled? It's just gone. It's literally gone. So you've got NBC News. Oh, perhaps it's right here. We got it. There we go. NBC News. Last March, Iowa police investigated a bomb threat targeting a junior high school. They determined that the threat was a hoax, but a detective from the police department had a theory about its possible inspiration, the Libs of TikTok account. Here's why I want to put these stories together. Okay. Tucker Carlson has been on a list since August. He has another entry added to the list. It appears, I could be wrong, it could be the same. It looks different. Following his interview with Vladimir Putin, he certainly is under a heightened security threat. He's probably getting death threats. These fact checkers on the community notes say it's not a kill list. It's not a kill list. The corporate press then claims Libs of TikTok, the same day, today, is inspiring bomb threats by targeting individuals. So it's funny how when it comes to the perceived enemies of the establishment, no, or I should say, yeah, they're not being threatened. They're not a kill list. But when it comes to someone reporting on and sharing information, which does create a threat to the establishment, they say, you are inspiring death and kill list. They call it stochastic terrorism. This is a tactic of the left where they accuse the right. When the right says, hey, I am critical of your thing, they call it stochastic terrorism. Then when Tucker Carlson is placed in the crosshairs, they say, no, it's totally fine. They're just saying, he's a propagandist. But the outrage is crazy. I don't know what you guys think of the corporate press so far and their entertaining posts about Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin.
It's complete hysterics, isn't it? It's kind of wild. I mean, it's these confusing articles that come out where they're saying Tucker Carlson says he's the only one who's tried to interview him, and you'll get a quote from an AP reporter being like, does he really think he's the only one who wants to talk to Putin? And at the same time, they're sort of condemning him for talking to Putin. You have to say, what do you guys want? Did you guys want to have the exclusive, or are you mad that he's doing this?
Well, how about this? Any country that we have given hundreds of billions of dollars to, I don't think we should be in a debate over the semantics of whether or not it's a kill list or it's some, government hit list. And it happens to be that Americans who have ended up on that list have been basically killed by the Ukrainian government. And I think people don't understand the lengths to which the regime has gone to cover up what is going on in Ukraine. And I think why you're seeing these crazy numbers, in some ways, I think it's sort of the Streisand effect, as cliche as that may sound. But look, they don't want Tucker Carlson to interview Putin. I would say look no further than the fact that it was less than a week after Russia invaded Ukraine back in February that the Pentagon, again, they never publicly announced it, but I believe it was The Intercept through FOIA, got documents showing that they reestablished the Influence and Perception Management Office, which they basically used to spread misinformation and disinformation. They say counter misinformation and disinformation, not just abroad, but domestically, here at home too. And that's why I think you see them in free fall, because they've had such a monopoly on trying particularly to control this narrative, not just because Ukraine works as part of their broader global agenda, but I think on a personnel and personal level, when you talk about, the Biden family's involvement there, I think Ukraine has just sort of been a cash cow for a lot of DC elites. So I think that's why you're seeing such a mad rush to really keep what's going on there under wraps.
So the website, my understanding, is not affiliated with the government officially, but has worked with law enforcement sources in Ukraine and foreign government sources for verification of information or whatever. So it's kind of just like
the fact checkers here.
Well, but I would say this is clearly a information warfare asset for them, listing all these people and showing all this propaganda and things like this. And the government uses contractors. It would be absurd to be like, oh no, they're not CIA. They're just a contractor for the CIA. They're a totally private entity. They're not associated with the government. The president's not involved. They just sometimes coordinate. You know what I mean?
And we pay their bills on occasion.
But have there been American citizens who are on this list and killed?
I believe there were, or I don't know if it was necessarily this list, but I think the whole Gonzalo Lira case, I'm pretty sure he was.
I'd have to imagine he's been on their list, and then they hunted him down, and now he's reportedly dead. But
my point is, we shouldn't even be in a space where there's gray area about whether or not it's like a kill. Regardless, or if Americans are dead or alive, like for a country that we have given so much money to.
But it's not a government website, so
But I think it more or less. I think that's like saying the fact-checking organizations here in the United States that have been set up as sort of outfits of federally funded institutions, or they're receiving federal funds. It's like, well, I guess they're technically not, but I think that's precisely the point. They like to be able to play that kind of shell game. Right. Say, oh, well, it's technically not the government, but by all intents and purposes, it is.
It is acting in the interest of the government and probably has some kind of, intermediate